Forrest Brownlee. I am the second year diesel instructor at Hibbing Community College. We have a 2-year program, and what I'm going to do this morning is give you a brief overview of what we do here and where we're looking to get you by the time you graduate. So to start off, we got a 2-year program that gives you a year with first year instructor, who's John Bright, and then a year with me. First year, what you're going to do is you're going to go over welding, general shop practices, diesel engines, a first semester of hydraulics, heavy-duty air brakes, and electrical systems. And then you're going to go in the spring semester and you're going to spend some time in a second round of diesel engines, and then a round of diesel subsystems, which covers fuel systems, air induction systems. And then you're going to go into electronics again for another section, and then the very last thing you'll do is air conditioning. And in the first year, the main goal is to get you a good foundation to work with, so you'll start with the basics and you work your way up from there. And then second year, what we do is I'll take you and I'll do a brief overview of measuring in the machine shop. I'll give you a little bit of I would say a very light sprinkling of actual machinist work in there to get your mind wrapped around all the extra things that go along with our jobs. And then we'll dive into power shift transmissions, torque converters. We'll go through standard transmissions and clutches. We'll do an undercarriage overview and then get into steering and alignment. And then in the spring semester, I get you for your final section of hydraulics and final section of electronics, which by that point you should have a good foundation to work with, and we dive into the troubleshooting aspect of it and give you a little bit more of an understanding of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the next 10-15 minutes, somewhere in there, and I'm going to walk you through the shop. I'm going to show you some different components, talk about them a little bit, and hopefully it gets you interested enough to come check out the program. Thanks. Preview of the welding shop. So over here we got a grinding booth where you spend some time prepping your welds. We got nice suction tables, keeps all the dust and debris out of there and gets it sucked up into the blower vent up top. That way you don't end up with as much of it coming in your nose. And then we'll just grab a welding booth here and take a quick look inside. Got a setup table. Looks like somebody left some work here. They might need a little bit of practice, but that's what we're here for. So when you do the welding program, there's a certain amount of welds that you have to get done. And cover up some names here so people can take a look if I get to focus. But there is 17 welds you need to do with a bunch of different positions up top. So it covers vertical, horizontal. Alright, after that brief overview of welding, so general shop practice 1 is the very first class you'll take that actually starts getting you into the mindset of being a mechanic. What it does is it takes and makes you familiar with your basic set of tools, the toolbox, basic shop upkeep. I got the tool room locked. I'll open up the tool room and just show you a quick glimpse of everything that we got in there. So it's not too of a mess. Oh no, not too bad at all. So we do have a tool room that we maintain. All our specialty tooling, our pullers, big wrenches, and bigger sockets are kept in here. You'll get a brief overview of how the correct way is to clean, maintain the tools. Along with that goes a whole bunch of safety training, which doesn't really stop. Once you start working in this industry, everything you do relies on keeping you and your coworkers safe. Then when you're done with general shop practices and you need a break from looking at all the tooling, what will happen is John will take and start building your fundamental knowledge of basic diesel engines, starting with components. So right now I'm in our little lecture hall. It is a nice cozy spot. We got whiteboards all over. We got some monitors so we can keep track of what everybody's doing. And then we have parts and pieces from everything that we take apart and play with in the whole shop in here. So you will see lots of engine parts. There's lots of transmission parts. There's lots of electrical components and basic engine stuff. So what John will do is he'll start off with different components, and first you'll go around and figure out what the components do and what their purpose is in life, and then you'll go around and figure out how all of that gets put together. And then you'll jump into your first step on the electrical pathway. We have very simple boards, kind of walk you through, get you familiar with the meter, understand all the electrical lingo and all the various schematic symbols. And then what you'll do when you get done with this and you're comfortable with this, we'll upgrade you and throw you on to an electrical trainer. And you'll spend some time seeing how the components are actually all tied together, a little bit more time troubleshooting. And then what we do is we dive into the paperwork aspect. And we start out pretty simple. We got a schematic. This is a paper schematic. Nowadays, a lot of these are on the computer. You can point and click and look at the different components you're looking at. But we'll give you the foundation to look at this paper schematic, find your way through it, and then get into the actual troubleshooting on the equipment. Then with hydraulics, we started out like electrical with the very basics. We look at the components, we figure out what they're for, what their jobs are, what the schematic symbols mean, and then we start putting it all together so it makes sense and actually functions as a unit. After that, you'll jump into brake fundamentals. This is a brake board we use to get you started, go over the foundation systems. We have everything that's packed into the truck on this board, and then there's 2 other boards floating around the shop with the basics. Once you get the basics down, we'll let you go dive into a truck and start tearing into it. And then once you understand where all the engine pieces go, take you out in the shop and you get to tear an engine down to the block. You put it all back together, make sure it turns over. We have some engines that are purely training engines that you take apart and get assembled that don't run. And then we have engines, this one in particular is going to be put together. This one's going to be running on a stand. It's an older engine, it's a mechanical engine, but what that gives us is it gives us a better idea to get you mechanically inclined, take it apart without worrying about all the electronics, and then once you know the fundamentals, we can dive into a more electronically controlled engine with common rail and with all sorts of computers to make it run and fire. And just to bring into perspective on the different range of stuff that you can end up working on as a diesel mechanic, here is a smaller engine. This came out of a small excavator. And then there is another engine right here, a big Caterpillar V8. That came out of a dozer. And we end up, every once in a while, we get to see a V12 in here, or even a V16. So a little bit of comparison again. This skid steer is roughly the same size as the engine over there. And like I said, the first go around in second year diesel, we do have a small mechanical machine shop. What we do is we utilize this space mostly for making parts and then an overview of precision measuring. Quick overview in here. And like everything else, we always start out with the safety aspect, because in everything we do, if we're not paying attention to what's going on around us, we can end up with some problems. And then in the prospect of putting everything together, when you're in second year, we start working from the engine down to the ground. So what I got here is I got a torque converter that's flayed apart for theory purposes, and then I got a clutch assembly right here that we go through. We will spend a lot of time overviewing torque converter theory, a lot of time overviewing clutch, go over some basic troubleshooting procedures, and we go over what happens when stuff starts going wrong, and then we dive into the transmissions. We go through manual transmissions, power flows. We also take these apart and put them all back together, so you got a good foundation of what happens in a mechanical manual transmission. And once we get through that mechanical transmission, we go ahead and take apart a power shift transmission. Now this is a older mechanical power shift. It's all hydraulically controlled. Basically, it's what you got in your small automobile, just a heck of a lot bigger. From transmissions, we drive into the differentials, talk about gearing basics, gearing concepts. We take apart the differentials, we put them back together, we torque them, we put them to spec, give you a little bit of an idea of what it's like working in a spec shop. Right here is an example of some smaller differentials, awesome loaders. We will be taking these all the way apart in the next step here with the program I got going on right now, and go through all the power flows, go through all the bearings, going through all the gearing, and we're going to fix these up so they look like new. Now I'm up on top of one of our older pieces of equipment we use for training. The nice thing is it gives us a good simple place to start. What I'd like to say is the first year when you get into hydraulics, you start with the basics. Second year we start getting to doing pressure checks. Get in here, take the panel off, pull those valves apart down there, and actually start going through what makes them click internally on a piece of equipment, and start giving you an idea of how to troubleshoot them on the fly. Because in order to troubleshoot, like anything else, if you're troubleshooting an engine, troubleshooting hydraulics, troubleshooting electronics, before you troubleshoot, you need to know how it actually works and how it should work, so that when you're having issues, you can start to pinpoint what kind of issues you're looking for. And then for the end here, a little highlight on the customer repair section of the program. This is our shop. We have a couple of cranes that we use. We got one here, and then I got quite a bit of equipment in here right now. Give you a quick overview of what we got going on. And the best part about customer repairs, it lets us actually get our boots on the ground and dig into the equipment. This grader right here, we got a bunch of smaller projects we're going to be doing on it. We're going to be taking apart the hydraulic cylinders, repacking the hydraulic cylinders, we'll be replacing the hoses, rebuilding hydraulic hoses. The engine's going to come out of it, and we're going to be taking the transmission out of it and applying what we learned from our power shift transmission class and go through and fix the transmission. We have a drive coupling failure, we're kind of thinking. We got engine runs, nothing else moves, and the common denominator between that is the transmission, because that runs my hydraulic pumps and everything else in this machine. And then we're going to be taking the wheels off, getting into the brakes, fixing the brakes up, and basically getting this old grader here a second look out on life so I can go do some work for somebody. Track's undercarriage. Got a track pulled apart here on our school excavator. What we did here is we took it apart, we split the track with our track press, some of the specialty tooling we get to use, and then we did an inspection on the rollers, a little bit of inspection on the undercarriage itself, take a look at the track links, make sure everything is good to go. Just another point of perception here. When we think about being a diesel mechanic, a lot of people think that you run around with a big sledgehammer and a pry bar and a grease gun, and your job is just to grunt and get stuff pushed around. But the reality is now we have such a wide range of stuff we work on, from forklifts to small compact skid steers to big excavators. And what it really comes down to is, especially with our newer trucks and our newer equipment, we'll pop this hood and take a look here. You need to understand electronics, and for that matter, get into the computer systems as well, because what we did to make life a little bit easier for us and the meet emission standards to run everything a little bit cleaner, we've started to rely on electronics to take the place of deciding how clean the engine should run, where the mechanic starts to diagnose and troubleshoot. Just taking a look here, how many sensors and different electronic components do you see just to make the EGR system on this truck run clean? There is a lot of technology going on and a lot of thinking going on just from the engine's computers. Alright, go to the other side here and take a look at the firewall. So, just taking a quick gander under the hood here, we got 1, 2, 3 different computers that have to work together just to make this truck run. That's not counting the other computers down on the transmission, maybe a computer controlling the brake system for your anti-lock brakes and your ABS. So there is a lot of electronics going into those trucks. And when we start thinking of all these electronics, we also need to support people. So you might come into this program thinking that you're going to be out working with your hands all the time. And what might happen is you get into the electronics and you start really enjoying what you're looking at and what you're working with on the computer, and you could end up basically wearing Nice clothes to work every day, working on the phone, working on a computer, helping people troubleshoot electrical malfunctions on equipment. A Caterpillar, any major equipment manufacturer is going to have those electronic specialists that help the mechanics or the owner-operators walk through their equipment, get to learn it better. And you also have all the support staff and parts. So I know a lot of people that I went to school with. I know 2 of them for sure are making a really good wage running parts stores. Calling people, finding parts. They're running the computer systems. Parts searching. All of that kind of stuff. So I guess here's what I'll leave you with. If you are interested in the program and you want to come check it out, feel free to give us a call. We give you the foundation knowledge to go out in the world. Alright, well, hopefully you enjoyed your quick overview of the program. In parting, what I'd like to say is that we strive to do our best to give you the foundational knowledge to go out in the world, get a good job, and start your own journey.